Okay, hello everyone, Ron again, and in this video, we're going to talk about setting up an FLStudio project. So, check this out. There are several ways to think about it, and here's usually what I think about when I am setting up projects now. So you've got the mixer track, you got the channel rack, you got the playlist. So we're going to start by talking about the playlist first. So obviously, on the channel rack here, it shows whatever plugins you've instantiated, and you will notice that, okay, usually when you go all the way over, or if you click this plus, you have the option to pick whatever plugins, and these are called generators, that you want to add to the project. And generators are the things that are going to generate sound, and they're going to produce the sounds that you put into the song you make. So let's look at Citrus. Now you insert it, it opens up right here. It shows you the number of wherever it's going to go on the mixer tracks. So you can see that my voice is channel 2. You can see that channel 1 is already occupied by that instance of contact that has 25 in it. But if we click here, we should start thinking about organization when you set up a project from the beginning of it. So notice that this one is already on track 1, but when I loaded this one, it loaded onto the master bus, and you can tell this by the fact that it has no number next to it. But you don't want that, because you want everything to be separated so you can affect sounds individually. So what I can do is I can go to assign to new instrument track. I can highlight it right here, and I can hold Control and press L, and that assigns it to a free track. But it's better to assign it to an instrument track for this reason. If you look at the playlist, you see the instance of contact is already here. So it will be affected everywhere where you make a change. So if I change the color, it's going to change it here, and it's going to change it here, and it's going to change it here. So that's the benefit of that. Whereas if I look at Citrus and I change the color of Citrus, make it blue, that change is not reflected in the mixer channel, and it doesn't exist in the playlist yet. So if I assign this to a new instrument track, notice that it changes to blue, and it's added to the playlist, so that if I make a pattern, and let's say I copy, change the name of the pattern, misclick, change the name of the pattern, make it Citrus, and then I insert it. Now this is the Citrus pattern. So that's useful for subdividing the different elements of your arrangement, including audio tracks, because you could go here and you have routing, there's track mode, it's unassigned, but you can make it an audio track or an instrument track. And that's extremely useful. Now, the better way to do this would be the normal way that I would, in that, let's see. Okay, well, there's a malfunction, but ordinarily it would open up over here, and you will have the plugin picker that is to the left. And so you could choose whatever plugin you wanted, sort of like this. And you could drag them and drop them right here. But for some reason it's not coming up right now. Maybe there's a bug. Anyhow, let's continue onward. So I will do this way. And let's say we use one of my favorite synthesizers, which is Mini Synth. I feel like it's overlooked, but I like it. If I hold down Alt and press C, this will copy it. So you'll see Mini Synth number 2. Now let's say that I have 4 instances of Mini Synth, and I assign each of them to a track like this. Now at some point, let's pretend that Citrus is doing something different. So you want to assign them in terms of the type of instrument that it is, right? Let's say that Citrus is going to be a bell sound, and you want all of those sounds to be alike. Let's pretend that Contact has a drum sound in it, or it's a drum set. And that these mini synths are each going to be orchestral. So we'll put viola, violin, cello, and bass. Now, you're organizing your project, and you have to start thinking about what you're going to do at the end during the beginning. So now all of these things they're here, and they all match in this way. But let's say if I didn't copy it, maybe this one might have loaded and it could be a different color. Usually it would be black if it's set to default. And let's say this one is some color like green. And then you look at this, and it's hard to tell what is what, because everything is not color coded the way it should be. So if you go here, the advantage of having instrument tracks and or audio tracks is that you can group them. When you right click and press G on the keyboard, it's going to group it with the track above. So you continue doing that, and I think of this as choosing one as a leader. If you hold down Shift and scroll, these will now move up and down as a group, and so will whatever patterns are in them. So now let's say the drums are going to be pink. This bell sound, let's say if I had chimes or whatever, and I have like a bell section, maybe mallets, those are going to be independent. In fact, I could actually make it one. So let's look at one of the presets that I have created. And in this video, I'm not going to play the sounds because I did not actually normalize this project to not clip on YouTube, and I don't want it to be too loud. But just for the sake of argument, we've now actually got a bell sound. You see how it changed to black? Perhaps I don't want it to be black. But if I group them, I'll show you. So we go here, auto color the group, and they all change to be the same color. Maybe I don't like this color. So middle click, right? That's when you press down on the scroll wheel on the mouse. Go here, decide what color you want. Let's say this blue. Auto color the group. And now, when I go to the mixer track, they're all the same color. Now, I'm going to add a few more and pretend that we have a project that I'm really going to create. And maybe I will make something out of this. You never know. But for just right now, add an instance of Flex. Go down to favorites and Celeste. That's one of my favorites. It's really a bell sound. Assign it to a new track. You see it appears here and it appears here. Now scroll it up. Right click, press G, they're grouped together. But what if I want this to be a different color, right? And I want it to be red. So I want to color these. And we'll say for the sake of argument that the drums are all inside of one contact instance because that is possible. You can see I can uninstantiate, if that's a word. I can uninstantiate the example of 25 that I have. And I can add a full drum set like 90s drummer or 60s, 50s drummer. You see, it plays everything. So the different keys represent different parts of the drum set. And you can route these so that each drum will go out to a different mixer track, and that is beneficial. So then we will have something like this is a contact instance, but it'll do this track +1, +2, +3, +4, and so on, and it will route the instruments to different tracks. So the way I would handle this is to move this over. And remember, we're thinking about organization. So right click, separate it. And now look here, you have track 1, which is my voice. 2, which is a bell sound. 3 through 6 are the orchestral proxies. And this is another bell sound. Then you have drums. So it would make no sense and be confusing if this first one was in front of these. And you have a kick drum that's in channel 2, and then it's +1, so the snare drum is here. Because then the bell and the snare would be playing through the same thing, and they will have the same processing. So this is the importance of this, routing tracks to a specific destination where they would work. So now you want to sort these things into groups. When they're color coded, if they were all the same color, you will look on these and you wouldn't know which was which, or it would be harder to tell. But when you assign them to instrument tracks like this, they share the name, because you can see I didn't change this to Lovely Bell. I changed the preset when I opened Citrus, and it changed the name here. And so did Flex, because it instantiates as Flex. Right, so check this out. Let's say I open another example of Flex, and I go to like Essential Guitars, and I choose this one here, or that one, because they both sound good. Notice it was Flex first, and now it's Ace Nylon. Assign it to a new track, changes the name of the track, changes it here too. Now everything is organized, and let's say, just for the sake of example, I'm going to put it in this, and it turns red because of auto color group. It's to be noted that it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it gets weird and finicky, but today it's behaving. So it changed the color, and now I don't have to seek to figure out where this is actually at. Now keep in mind that when you do this, it's going to put it on the next available slot. So that's why my voice has not been overtaken, because there are plugins on it. But if there were not, then it would start on track 1. So what I would do is possibly I would move the drum section really far away, because it would look something like this, right? You're going to have maybe 6 or 7 instruments total in any instance of like drums. So I will have them just named whatever they're named, and they will be named automatically, but sequestered as a group like this. And this will be that section. So you separate it from the others because you don't want to confuse yourself. Now you want to be looking, say if I have a bell section when I'm writing something, right? There's bells, and when I look on this playlist, they're all together. My eye knows to look for red, that's a section. I look for blue, that's a section. I look for drums, they're all together. Even if there's only one pattern, I know that they're going to be divided here because of the way I route them in contact, which is an advanced concept, more so than this. So what I'm going to do is organize this. And actually, if I was doing it, I feel like I would put the bells in front because that's just cool. And then I'm going to go here. You're going to notice these are all out of order the same way. And I'm going to go sort by track number. You could also do it by color, but I usually do it by track number because that's what I like. So now everything is in line, and I can look here. I say this is the first one. When I go here, it's going to be the first one. It's the same for this. Celeste is the second one. When I go here, it's going to be the second one. And there's little things like this that cause you to save time because you're not searching around to the point that you forget what you were about to do. Now the next thing is this. If I highlight these, I can affect them all at the same time. So let's use my voice as the first example of what I'm about to say. Because what I have is routing, color, docking. Right now, if you right click on any mixer track, there's a bunch of options. And if you go down, it says dock to left, middle, or right. So that controls the orientation of the track. When you think of like right mid spacing and like left spacing in a Word document, for example. So if I click right, it'll just stay on the right side and it won't be mixed with these. And then it's sort of like its own thing. It's separated. So it doesn't cause you to look at it and even consider that it's one of these. Now, literally, this one's the first track that's over there. And it's the first track here. This is not something that if I'm writing music that I had to consider that the audio might be in one of these places. And it streamlines the work process. So now we're going to look at the next thing when you consider buses, because this plays into that same idea. What I normally do is go here, pick some number of tracks that are directly at the end, and dock them all to the right. And what color they are and what their names are, it depends on what I'm going to use them for. So I'll take these, highlight all of them, go over to this little arrow, and this is the arrow where you have the option to route to this track. If you right click, route to this track only, sidechain to this track only. But we're not going to be clicking those because this is about making a bus right now. So you should make a bus for all your instruments. Now, if you click this, if you hold down Control and you click it, then it will route all of them to only this track automatically. If you hold Shift and left click, you can see it sidechains. So the info goes, but there's no volume. Now, if I hold Control and click it again, then it's going to be 100% volume. And you can see that in the top corner, the top left, right underneath my name. So if we look here, we got that, and that. Because there are times when you want to compress all of the instruments. And actually, I routed them to the wrong one because that's my voice. So that's an example of what I mean. So I should color my voice differently. Right? Like some bright color that stands out like that. Type my voice. Wow. Can't type today. So now that one is more obvious. So I'm going to take these. All three of them are routed to this track now. And I would put like bell bus. Change the color of it to probably the same color that they are, because it will guide your eye. Do the same thing with these right here. Change this to orchestra bus. Make them the same color. And the same thing would follow logically for the drums. This is not a hard, fast rule that these should be the same color, because there's a lot of times where I make them a different color on purpose. Normally, I use this teal kind of color for, or I guess maybe it's cerulean. It looks cerulean to me. But I use that to signify delay. Normally, reverb is dark blue. So, reverb. Copy. Second reverb would be some different one. Like this is going to be a far one. This one's going to be a close one. If I add a third one, it's going to be in the middle. Drum bus, orchestra bus, bell bus. Now why? Why do you need a bus? Because you do things to the individual instruments, but then you consider them in mass as a unit. So you may compress the entire bus, like the mix bus, if one of them is, say, doing something that's like too much. Like if you lower these faders like this, but you can't quite get it to the way you want it to sound, and you want to equalize everything so it sounds correct, that's what's meant by adding glue. And it's really useful when you do multi-band compression, and Maximus is like awesome for that. Same thing with these, with all of them, because you might want to compress the drum bus, and you also might want to EQ it. That's what I do a lot. And if you want to hear if there are resonances in the reverb, which is another thing, because you could have mud and not know where it's coming from. It could come from the reverb. Once you've added one here, it's going to be at 100%. But if you just add every track individually, which you could do, like you go here, and along the way, I would add the amount that I want. So you wouldn't see everything at 100%, because I want some things to be closer. So like if this is the closest instrument, it's going to have less reverb. This one might have something like this. This one might have more. This one might be like in the middle, somewhere around the same thing as that one. And then I'll turn this down because maybe there's too much reverb in general. I'll compress the reverb and EQ it for resonances. But if I just add every track like this, then when I turn these tracks off, the reverb is going to disappear too because there's no more sound being generated. But if I separate the dry signal so that it's going here, and the reverb signal is going here, then when I turn off this, and say these turned on, I can turn that off and hear the reverb by itself. So that's why you would do this, because then it's easier to detect resonances, because it's harder to hear if there's resonances in the reverb while the dry sound is playing too. And you can look at it and compress it basically. Or Fruity Limiter and Maximus have visual displays that are actually very good, especially if you look in the manual. So those are some things to consider. Let me see, did I write anything else? Nope, that's basically it. And it saves a lot of time to learn the shortcuts like these, especially keyboard shortcuts and middle clicking. If you have an actual mouse and you click in the middle. Another useful tidbit is what happens when you scroll in a certain place. So if you are just here and you scroll, it goes up and down. But let's say if you hold control here and you scroll, it zooms in. So let's say you're zoomed in, you go up here onto the scroll bar and you scroll and it goes right and left. If you scroll with the scroll wheel while you're here, it zooms in or out. So these are things to know. If you hold down Alt and you scroll, it zooms vertically. Control zooms horizontally, as I said. But you can zoom horizontally by going to like where the measures are written in the playlist, like where they're signified, the 1, 2, 3, 4, those are bars. If you scroll there, it zooms. And so the goal of this video was to just save you time while you're setting up a project, because it's important to think about what you're going to do later in that project. And you want to start thinking about that from the beginning. You know, you're like, all right, if I picked all these sounds, then when I come back here, if I don't work on this project for a while because I get hindered by like something else, then it's going to be easier to pick up where I left off because things are so streamlined. And I just have basically left myself visual cues. I'm like, yo, I did all this, and that's all pink, and then it's pink here, and then this is like cerulean, and then that is too, and these are red. So they all just go together. This is something special. That's why it's a unique color that nothing else is. These are reverb because that's my thing. That's what would go there. And probably something like this would be delay. Some light blue color or light green like that. because I think of like Fruity Delay 3. Yeah. And you would be considering all these things at the beginning, so you don't have to think about them later. You don't have to figure out like, oh, I left off. Also, another useful thing is to, because I just thought about it, you can go to the Fruity Notebook, go to more plugins. When you have a lot, it takes a while to load the list. I have like all of Complete Control 13 Collector's Edition is like ridiculous, and the Isotope stuff. If you type in notes, Fruity Notebooks come in. So you can put it on the master bus. You can automate it so that it will change words in case you want to make a video or something like that. You can write notes about what you're going to do to the track. I do this by hand a lot of the time, or I just remember, because you don't have to use a notebook. What I'll do sometimes is I'll do something like this, right? Let's say I know I need to EQ something, so I leave an EQ open. So when I open it, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to EQ. And then I'll highlight this section. And it will only play this when I press play. So I know I need to EQ that section. And I'll close this, and I'll have this just by itself. These are little things that make you pick up where you left off. And obviously you see that this is the master bus. So if I open this and I see this, I'm like, oh, okay, the last thing I was going to do was to EQ the master bus. It's about helping yourself to stay in a continual workflow that is efficient. And it's going to save you a lot of time in every single project when you decide to do this. Because you can even make this, you can save it as a template. You can save it as a project, right? Save or save as. It'll ask you, if you save a new version and you've already named something, it's going to give it the same name and put like a number 2. So if I name this Untitled, and then I hit save new version after I saved it as Untitled, it will save it as Untitled 2. But I'm not going to do that. You can, you can play around with that yourself. It is useful at some points when you want to keep the original project, but see if you can improve on it because you learned something new. This is something that I've done over time, and it has been fruitful for me. So templates, things like that. If you go here, there's a lot of templates they offer. The default for me is empty because then FLStudio loads the fastest. This one is called live stream that I'm affecting right now. Master template is for mastering. Neutron is something different that I kind of never really used. And like standard beginning and all of these are just things for a specific purpose, kind of like that. Like standard beginning has a whole bunch of stuff like this instantiated already. Like the synthesizers that I use the most, they would just load and they will already be here. And I think there's reverb too. So I don't have to add all of those things. Because obviously I took this whole video to do organization. And you may not want to do that every time. But if you take the standpoint that each song is different and you don't know what you're going to do yet, and you're just trying to start something, maybe you have a drum idea, you just want to like record it, then that's when you do something like this. Or you have an empty template, like the master template is empty. It just has a bunch of mid-side channels and parametric EQs and things. And there's a section like this that is docked to the right so that it is the entire track summed, the side and the mono put back together. So with that being said, that concludes this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I've been, considering that I should probably stream more rather than to edit. So forgive any mistakes I make. They can actually be pretty funny watching them back later. But as always, thank you for watching and have an awesome day. Peace.